So I was in the middle of filming my next project when I was approached by a subscriber, and it went a little something like this. So, heard you picked up a Sega Nomad for a couple $100. Since Sega Nomads are over €1,000 in my country, could you pretty please pick one up for me the next chance you get? I have every handheld except for this device, and you'd be my newest best friend if you acquired one on my behalf. I promise to name my upcoming child after you if you grant me this request. Maybe. When I see words like recapped or glitch, there's no telling the level of this seller's handiwork. Nevertheless, the purchase went through and it arrived in my mailbox. Now I was going to send it as is for him to tinker with, but he asked questions like condition and such, and it just snowballed from there. Upon powering the device up, I got nothing. Nada. Okay. This eBayer did mention it takes a few power cycles for it to work, but I had no such luck. This is definitely not a glitch to me. It seems like it's broken. Fortunately, the device reads games, so I'm confident we can track down the issue barring the device hasn't been butchered. Time to get to work and see if we can get this subscriber's Nomad up to snuff. Upon opening this console up, I was a bit overwhelmed with all the action going on. And I'm not sure what to say about the creativity of this repair either. It's obvious this pad had been torn during the recap process. But this ground leg freely floating around inside the Nomad is sure to short out eventually. Look at how close these two capacitor legs are in proximity to each other. I wonder what other kind of treasures we might find here. So I see some duct tape covering the LCD driver board's components. But I wonder if there's any sign of damage. Oh, and in case you're wondering, I didn't even edit out unscrewing this LCD. There were no screws securing this screen to the main board at all. After investigating the wiring and noting its craftsmanship, let's check up to see if everything is installed correctly. I'm not a fan of how drawn out TP237's solder joint is with the component wire, but it's not wrong. There's no doubt in my mind that this LED indicator was flattened due to carelessness when the shell was closed. This LED doesn't have much clearance inside, and any form of manhandling it will net you this kind of result. While the solder points and wiring check out with this device so far, let's clean it up for future repairees so that we can avoid any confusion. First things first, all this nonsense has to go. I expect anyone else repairing my handiwork would do the same. Let's color match these wires where it counts, and use some heat shrink instead. This optional ground wire that pairs with the power source will be marked in white. Now that our wires are all sorted out, let's tackle prepping the rest of the board starting with this bent LED. Let's also get rid of these remnant white wires that don't convey any information to us. I'm a firm believer in installing wires in some sort of meaningful way, even if they seem cryptic to some. And we still have one more wire that needs to be dealt with. I try to use jumper wires as a last resort, and I'm confident that we could forgo this one just because a pad got removed. I also can't ship this device to someone knowing that a capacitor leg is all but millimeters away from shorting out. Let's get rid of this jumper wire and remove the capacitor temporarily so that we can have better access to the PCB. I touched on this kind of repair during my Game Gear recap video, but you can expose the copper traces below the board with a fiberglass pen. We don't need to go nuts on the whole board. Just expose what you need to reattach the capacitor, and you're good to go. After fluxing our newly exposed pad, we can simply reattach our capacitor and keep our main board in spec. Oh, dear God. If you're a regular to the channel, this scene might look a little familiar. Attaching this LCD is just a rehash of our last video, but if you haven't watched it, we're attaching the component signal to the pad TP237. While the center ground post is suitable for this LCD install, I'll be attaching it to the top left test pad. Since we will be bypassing the buck converter on the LCD driver board, we can simply use test pad TP209 like so. And just like last time, we'll be soldering this optional ground to the bottom left switch post. Let's go ahead and tackle this LCD's buck converter and remove it from the driver board. Now, I could have used some editing tricks and simply said mission accomplished, but that's not what we do on this channel. I have a sneaking suspicion this LCD's driver board is dying inside, so let's use a spare one I had on hand. This subscriber has no idea I'm replacing this questionable LCD with one of my own. In fact, he won't even know until this video drops. If you want a more in-depth deep dive of installing this LCD, check out my Sega Nomad Resurrection video, which goes into this in way more detail. And boom! This Sega Nomad's display fires up every time. One thing that bugs me about sending this Nomad out to our subscriber is that it has 3 stripped screw posts. One of the stripped screw posts are on the shell itself, as you can see when I squeeze these halves together. Let's clean these stripped screw posts with some IPA to help promote adhesion of this epoxy we'll be using. I love JB Well products, but I'm unsure how long this stuff will hold up. If you've repaired stripped screw posts and can recommend an epoxy or different approach, go ahead and leave it down in the comments below. After mixing this 2-part epoxy up and sucking it up with a syringe, let's fill these post cavities up so that we can reset them after it cures. I didn't have any syringes on hand with the needle, as it probably would have helped in this case. Using a self-tapping screw, we can channel a suitable hole to fasten our device together in a more secure manner. I'm only tapping the post partially so that the final screw has the best chance to hold via friction. And there you have it. A device that initially started as disabled and is now ready to be enjoyed again by our subscriber. One thing I want to note before we conclude this video is that I have the utmost respect for anyone attempting to repair these devices. And that about does it for this video. If you like this content or if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them down below. And as always, I'll see you next time.